Peter was trapped. Peter was trapped not so much by the walls that went around the outer courtyard of the temple. No, Peter was trapped more by his fears in his heart and by his sense of self-preservation. The walls around the temple court, the temple itself, that was familiar enough. Peter had been there countless times before. This night he stood by a fire. It was cold, but not as cold as his dark heart. This night he stood by a fire. It was dark, but not as dark as his cold heart. You see, from his dark, cold heart spewed those denials about Jesus and knowing him and having any connection with him, spews that were eventually laced with cursing and swearing. And then the rooster crowed, and their eyes met. The Lord, he looked straight at Peter, but Peter couldn't bear to look at him. That cold, dark heart was now full of guilt and sorrow, embarrassment, and shame. Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire they had made to keep warm. Peter entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. One of the servant girls of the high priest on duty at the door came by. When she saw Peter seated there in the firelight, warming himself, she looked closely at him and said, "You also were with that Nazarene Jesus. Are you not one of this man's disciples?" But he denied it before them all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway. A little later, when the servant girl again saw him there, she said to those standing around, "This fellow is one of them." Someone else saw him and said, "You are one of them." Again he denied it with an oath, "I don't know the man." About an hour later, others asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. "Didn't I see him with you in the olive grove?" Then Peter began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, "I don't know this man you are talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord he had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside, broke down, and wept bitterly.